Okay, next part of the program is discussing one of the books published by Most Venerable Katukurunde ஞானானந்த Thero. So that is the Concept and Reality in Early Buddhist Thought. I think someone is ready to present where we have stopped. So I invite someone to start from where we are going to begin today.
Yeah, Avasaraya Bhante. We stopped basically on page 86, and it's a new section starting on 87. I'll straight away get into the new section, Bhante.
Right.
Abiding in the void. A more lucid illustration of the fact that the descent into sunyata is gradual and collateral with experience can be found in the Chula Sunyata Sutta of the Majjhima Nikaya. There, we see Ananda inquiring of the Buddha with some diffidence whether the Lord actually meant what he said when he declared at the township of Nagaraka that he used to spend most of the time abiding in the void, Sunyata Viharana. The Buddha reassures Ananda, adding that not only in the past, but at present also, he is used to abiding in the void. Then he proceeds to explain the true, unperverted, and pure descent into the void. Yathabhucca avipalatta parisuddha sunyata vakkanti. In keeping with his empirical approach, the Buddha begins from his immediate surroundings, the monastery of Pubbarama itself. Seyatapi ayam vigaramatu pasado sunyo hatti gavassa valavena sunyo chata rupa rajatena sunyo itti purisa sannipatena atti chevidam asunyatam yadidam bhikkhu sangam paticca ekattam evamevako ananda bhikkhu amanasikaritva gama sanyam amanasikaritva manusya sanyam aranya sanyam paticca manasikaroti ekattam. Thassa aranya sanyaya chittam pakkhandati pasidati santittati adimucchati. So evam pajanati ye assu dhartha gamasanyam paticca teda nasanti. Ye assu dhartha manusya sanyam paticca teda nasanti. Atti chevayam dhartamatta yadidam aranya sanyam paticca ekattani. So sunyamidam sanyagatam gamasanyayati pajanati. Sunyamidam sanyagatam manusya sanyayati pajanati. Atti chevidam asunyatam yadidam aranya sanyam paticca ekattani. Iti yamhiko tatta nahoti tena tam sunyam samanupassati. Yam panatatta avasittam hoti tam santam idam attiti pajanati. Evampi sesa ananda yathabhucca avipalatta parisuddha sunyata vakkanti bhavati. At this place of Migara's mother is empty of elephants, cows, horses, and
palace. As this
palace of Migara's mother is empty of elephants, cows, horses, and mares, empty of gold and silver, empty of assemblages of men and women, and there is only this that is not emptiness, that is to say, the oneness grounded on the order of monks. Even so, Ananda, a monk, not attending to the not attending to the perception of village, not attending to the perception of human beings, attends to the oneness grounded on the perception of forest. His mind is satisfied with, pleased with, set on and freed in the perception of forest. He comprehends thus the disturbances that might be resulting from the perception of village do not exist here. The disturbances that might be resulting from the perception of human beings do not exist here. There is only this degree of disturbance, that is to say, the oneness grounded on the perception of forest. He regards that which is not there as empty of it, but in regard to what remains there, he comprehends this is because it is. Thus, Ananda, this comes to be for him a true, unperverted and pure descent into emptiness.
Yeah, one moment, Saman. So actually, when we are reading the passage, it might appear like very sophisticated, really serious, or really difficult. But actually, the principle that Buddha is trying to inform us seems to be quite apparent and quite simple. Say, for example, you are going to a forest or you are going to attend a retreat, and you were in a city, maybe attending to various family matters and maybe going to some social responsibilities and maybe going to some professional activities, conducting a job and participating to various social events. So likewise, while you are in the typical family surrounding, there are so much of events going through, so much of say perceptions going through, and your mind is fully occupied with this and that, and you hear the music, you hear the news and various uncertainties and matters, family matters, social matters, politics, etc., etc. So you can understand the typical mentality of a typical worldly person, particularly living in the city. So how much of information, how much of responsibilities and many things are bombarded every time to the mind. Suppose now you are going to attend a retreat and assume that it is in a little far away place, a secluded place. And once you go there, so you actually have to do a kind of a trick. So that is to forget about your past. So what you are doing, what is your family background, and what are your responsibilities, and what is your job, and what is your political background, all that, if you are able to abandon, if you are able to say ignore and forget, then that is the point that Buddha is highlighting here. So once you arrive at the retreat center, assume that you have to hand over the the phone, you have to hand over the laptop. You can't use the phone, you can't use any other communication media. So likewise, you are basically supposed to cut off from the typical your social responsibilities and your connections with the family and all the other setup, so that you become somewhat secluded. So this is something actually we are trying to do at Nissarana. So once they arrive the retreat center, so they have to hand over the laptop, they have to hand over the cell phone, and you are not supposed to read the books or newspapers, and you are not supposed to watch the movies or news, television or any of those, radios or any of those. So the idea is now you are in a very limited environment with less sensual interaction. So you are free from newspapers now, you are free from all the news now, free from all the other music and films and all that typical gratification. And again, you are free from all the politics, country matters, social matters, worldly matters, all that you are now free, because at the retreat center, someone is feeding you. So you might have paid it, or you are being freely fed. You don't need to worry about even the food. You don't need to worry about your belongings. And you simply have to mind your own business. So that is the idea at a retreat center. So same thing Buddha highlights here. So once you arrive at the forest, this Migaramatu Pasada, there are only monks are there, and maybe 1 or 2 attendants are there, that's all. But there are no kings, no horses, no elephants, no politics, no kings, and none of them are there. So what is available is the monks, maybe the animals, maybe the trees, that is the forest. So similarly, while you arrive at the retreat center, what you have is the retreat organizer or any other participants. So that's all you need to take care. But you have to forget about all the other things. So now the point is you are free, or you are empty of all that past memories, all that past information, your associations, your responsibilities, your perceptions, all your problems. Now you are free, but still you are not free of the retreatants or the teacher, the kammatthana, the meditation, retreat center rules and regulations. You are not free of that. So that's the idea. So a huge burden is let go of, and still certain amount of burden is still available. Suppose now you are trying to associate the body. Now you close your eyes, and once you close your eyes, you can forget about all the others, and you become further secluded, very much like isolated. You feel alone. And now you are, not only that, you are now trying to pay attention only to the body, ignoring various thoughts, not paying attention to the thoughts. So you are simply trying to establish mindfulness within the body. So now you have only the body matters. So body aches, body pains, breathing, rising and falling, blood circulation. So all that, what you are feeling at the body is the only information you have, experience you have. But all the monastery-related matters are also now abandoned. So your mind is empty of kings, queens, government, social responsibilities, family responsibilities, politics, all that what you had while you are at the city, that is also not there, that you are empty of that. And once you come to arrive at the monastery, the retreat center, you had certain matters, rules, regulations related to the monastery, the retreat center, and that is also not there once you establish mindfulness within the body. So you are not empty of the body matters, the body pains and aches and all that, what you are going through your 6 senses. You are not empty of that. And then assume that you are trying to establish mindfulness in a particular time on a particular element characteristic. Say you are paying attention to the Patavi Dhatu, the hardness of the body, maybe the roughness, smoothness, heaviness. So likewise the Patavi Lakkana, so this whatever the earth characteristics, so that is what you are now trying to pay attention. In that sense, all the other 3 elements are very much like not emphasized, they are very much like ignored, put to the background, but your emphasis is only on to the Patavi Dhatu. So likewise, now you can say the other 3 characteristics or other elements are also empty, monastery matters are also empty, that your social background, family responsibilities, politics, all that country matters, all are also empty. But you are not empty of the Patavi Dhatu. So likewise, Buddha is giving us a very beautiful, very strategic kind of approach to the practice, how you are gradually emptying the mind, so that letting go of all the burdens, all our occupations in the mind, but still you are not free of a certain thing, that is what we are trying to emphasize, so that is what we are trying to pay attention. You are not free of that. You are not empty of that. It's a kind of a relative emptiness that we are talking here. And that is also very gradual and again very pragmatic. Certain parts are empty, but certain others are still present. You are not empty. Gradually, you are even emptying that present parts, so that you become further refined. Your attention is only limited to a very simple, very present moment activity. That is also very limited. So you are not empty of that, but many others are being emptied. Your mind is not paying attention to them. So you are empty of a large amount, but still you are not empty of a certain little process on which you are now paying attention. So likewise, our practice has to be refined, and we also as practitioners, as participants to a particular retreat, we also need to understand, so what is the theory behind, so what's the principle behind this process, So it's very much like we are trying to simplify the mind rather than occupying the mind, rather than say trying to comprehend so many things. So we are simply trying to simplify the mind, limiting our attention, our focus only to a selected process, which actually represent the whole process. Actually, what we are trying to pay attention is actually a sample of the whole huge process, but we can't comprehend the whole huge process. What we do is take a sample, pay attention, close attention to that little sample and try to understand the reality. So the process that Buddha is recommending here, and this is what he is trying to emphasize, and I think we all can understand it, and probably Saman, you can further read it.
Yeah, Bhante. In much the same manner as above, the Buddha describes how a monk gradually and by stages attained to the perception of the earth as the object of meditative absorption, Patavi Sanya, the perception of the infinity of space, Akasanchayatana Sanya, the perception of the infinity of consciousness, Viññānañcāyatana Sanya, the perception of nothingness, Akinchanyayatana Sanya, the perception of neither perception nor non-perception, Nevasanya Nasanayatana Sanya, and the mental concentration based on this signless Animittam Cheto Samadhi. At the last mentioned stage, he knows that he is experiencing only those forms of disturbances, dharata, arising from the body endowed with the six sense spheres, due to the fact that he is living. Then again he reflects on the mental concentration on the signless, and his mind delights and abides therein. He now begins to reflect thus, Ayampiko animitto cheto samadhi abhisankato abhisanchataito
Abhisanchetaito.
Abhisanchetaito. Yamko panakinchi abhisamkatam abhisanchetaitam tadanicham nirodha dhammam. This concentration of mind, that is signless, is affected and thought out. But whatever is affected and thought out, that is impermanent and liable to cease. Even as he knows and sees thus, his mind is released from the cankers of sense pleasures, of becoming and of ignorance. In freedom, he has the knowledge that he is freed, and he comprehends that he has attained the goal. He introspects and finds that which those disturbances that might arise from the three cankers are no longer there. He is still subject to whatever disturbances that might arise from his body with its six sense spheres, due to the fact that he is alive. Accordingly, he determines the fact of voidness, being faithful to the findings of his introspection. The Buddha sums up the discourse by asserting that this is the true, unperverted, pure and supreme descent into the voidness. Evamassa esa ananda yatha bucca avipalattha parisuddha paramanuttara sunyata vakkanti bhavati.
Yeah, one moment, Saman. Actually, now we are coming to a very beautiful and very profound area of the Dhamma. So, how one would attain the signless state? Assume that one is practicing vipassana meditation, satipatthana meditation, and assume that he is practicing, for example, Vedananupassana, and various feelings are now arising and passing away, and he is now trying to comprehend them, trying to understand their behavior. So more and more different types of feelings are arising but quickly passing away, arising and passing away, arising and passing away. So when it happens in a very rapid succession, and probably he is unable to recognize whether it is a pleasurable feeling or painful feeling or equanimous feeling, but he simply feels something, but it's almost momentary. He can't label them. whether it is pleasant or unpleasant or pleasurable or painful, equanimous, nothing he can't assert because things are happening in a very rapid succession, quite quick, quite speed. And so you are unable to add a label, whether it is a pleasurable feeling or painful feeling, particularly. But something is happening by the way. Some type of a feeling is happening by the way. Some type of sensation is happening by the way. So you simply know that, but without a label. So this is one stage that we might arrive in the Vedananupassana. I'm taking it as an example. So you can't find the quality of the Vedana. You can't find the quality, the tone of the feeling. What you can see is simply a mere feeling. This is one stage that you arrive because of the impermanence of the feelings. So feelings are quite impermanent, they are momentary, and you are able to recognize them, how quickly they are coming and going, how quickly they are rising and passing away. So as a result of that, now you become somewhat dispassionate about the process. Previously, assume that you are desiring the pleasurable feelings, pleasant feelings, and trying to escape from the painful feelings. But now you become quite equanimous about the whole different kinds of feelings because you know they are coming and going. You can't depend on them. And they are again ungovernable. And again, they are quite transient. Particularly, they are transient. So this anicca, so this transience, this impermanence is the point highlighted. So as a result of this impermanence, this transience, now you can't label them, now you can't add a tag to it, now you can't add a tone to it. But mere feelings are coming and going, arising and passing away. So ultimately, you become further and further dispassionate about the process, and you can't find any nimitta, you can't find any sign, any mark of the type of the feeling. Ultimately, you become further dispassionate, and ultimately, the mind gets released. So what we call the animitta vimokha mukha, a type of a door would arise, would open for you to the mind to get released. So far, it is continuously associating various objects, but now the mind can't associate anything. Rather, it simply gives up everything and get freed, temporarily get freed. So kind of an opening happened in the mind without any attachment, without any grasping, without any footing. Now it is being freed. No upadana, no any nissaya, no association, no clinging, no grasping. Without any grasping, now mind get released. So this is what further and further one is experiencing again and again. One is continuing with the practice, and later it becomes a natural status of the mind. So you are able to abide by this emptiness or abide by this signlessness. So this signless state become available to you, accessible to you, and you are able to arrive that signless state. Now you are able to maintain it for, say, a few minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. So likewise, you are enhancing it, prolonging it, so that suppose that you are now able to maintain that signless state for about 30 minutes, 40 minutes, maybe maximum 45, 50 minutes. That's all. So assume that you are able to maintain such a samadhi, then we can call it as animitta samadhi, the signless concentration. Actually, one has to develop like that, otherwise it might not get registered in the mind. So it is necessary to develop that animitta samadhi to such extent so that you become familiar with it and mind become familiar with it, mind start appreciating it, and mind let go of any kind of a, say, fear of it, and simply you are able to stay there without much trouble, without any signs. There are no thoughts, no signs, no marks. It's completely, mind is spacious and no footing. So this is a signless state. So signless samadhi, what you call the animitta samadhi. Now the beautiful thing highlighted here in the Chulasunyata Sutta is that Buddha emphasized this animitta samadhi also a vulnerable state. This state is also not a permanent state. This is also an impermanent state. The moment that the mind starts grabbing signs, picking signs, so you lose the animitta samadhi. You can't maintain the animitta samadhi, its purity is broken, because again the mind starts picking the signs, selecting the signs, approaching the sign, associating the signs. So now you are no more in the signless state. But the beauty is, once it is happening, the yogi needs to recognize it. Yogi needs to understand it and see why it is happening, how it is happening. So what is the defilement underneath, which is causing to be shifted from the signless state? It is true that you have thrown out from the signless state. Again, the mind starts picking the signs. Again, mind start having certain thoughts, perceptions. So why? So what is the cause? So where the defilement is? So that defilement, once you recognize again and again, it becomes weaker and weaker. So this is a really important process to overcome the defilements, particularly the subtle defilements. So anyone can, any vipassana practitioner can easily understand a lustful thought, anger thought, ill will. Those are easy to understand. But other subtle defilements are difficult to understand unless you have some clear picture in the mind, clarity in the mind, signless state in the mind. You can't understand the subtle defilements. But here in the signless state, when it is being broken, once you are thrown out from the signless state, you can understand, okay, there are certain defilements still operating. Again, mind starts picking certain signs. So what are these thoughts? What are these defilements? You can quickly recognize, so that you are able to abandon them, pay attention to them, so that it become weaker and weaker. So you are, in a way, reducing the influxes. You are able to reduce the asavas and anusaya. The influxes and the latent tendencies are now slowly weakened. So here Buddha ultimately mentioned, so one becomes an arahant as a result of this process. Slowly, all the influxes, all the latent tendencies are recognized and abandoned, and ultimately one understands, okay, now no more defilements, no more asavas, no more influxes. So one has become a keen asava, an arahant. And the beautiful thing highlighted for the arahant is that his mind no more has any kind of tiredness or any what we call darata, any disturbance, any kind of perversion, any disturbance, any interruption coming because of the karma asava. Say, for example, when you are attached to something, suppose that you have a beautiful, say, family. Your wife is beautiful, your husband is pretty good, your children are pretty good, and you are so associated with them, so attached to them. And once you go to some far away place, again and again, related to them, so many thoughts are coming, so many perceptions are coming, so many doubts can come, and so many uncertainties can come, and mental impressions can come, mental images can come. Your mind is fully occupied related to your family because you are so attached to them. So this is how the karma, the sensual desires are occupying the mind, tormenting the mind, because you are so attached to that karma, so attached to that desire, the sensual desire, sensual objects, your belongings. You are so attached. So your mind is very much like being occupied because of that. But once the karma asava is abandoned, here Buddha points out, you are completely free of that. You are no more being tormented by the sensuality. So the sensuality-related matters are no more torment in the mind, no more hindering the mind, no more burden in the mind. So the mind is experiencing some happiness, calmness, clarity, without any interruption, without any disturbance, because the karma asava is completely abandoned. Similarly, the bhavasava, the what we call the becoming. The bhavasava is the one actually pointing out the future and always thinking about the future, planning, trying to maintain a safe future, and worrying about the uncertainties about the world or your social status, your family status, etc., etc. not being able to fully happy in the present moment, always being unhappy, unsatisfied, or restless because of the futuristic matters. So here the bhava asava and the bhava tanha really torment in the mind. But once the bhava asava is abandoned, so the mind is completely free of that. There is no any tormenting, there is no any interruption or any kind of a perception about the such kind of an uncertainty, because the mind is utterly in the present moment, free from bhavasava, free from the desire to being. Similarly, the avijjasava always pointing out a person, an individual, I, myself, what belongs to me. So that is what the avijjasava particularly highlights, that there is a person, that person has to be looked after. There is a soul, that soul has to be looked after. And this person is very important. And so we are being burdened, so that because we need to protect this person. We need to protect this I, myself. But once the avidya is abandoned, there is no such person or individual or I, myself. Nothing belongs to me. So the mind is utterly free. Avijjasava is completely abandoned. Instead, the wisdom is now almost established in the mind. So there is no avijjasava. So avijjasava related matters, avijjasava related any kind of issues, problems, or any hindrance, any interruptions, burdens are not operating in the mind. So the Buddha points out here, so the Arahant would understand, so now mind is completely free of all that. But interestingly, he points out, still this body is living. So there may be still the six senses are operating. So as a result of that, there may be still some sense objects are time to time disturbing. Say while you are meditating or while you are living, so there may be a noise happening. Someone is talking, maybe dog barking, and a lot of noise can interrupt ourselves because our ears are operating. So we can hear things. We can't stop that. So even the Arahant has to go through that. Maybe your eyes are open and you can see various things. So that may be some difficult things or say undesirable things. And still some difficult, say, visuals can happen. But he had to bear it. Even though eye is going through such a difficult sight, but the mind is free of any kind of a burden. So the mind is free from any defilement. You are free of that, but still the body and your experience is not free of any kind of a burden coming from the six senses. So this is a very interesting point that the Buddha is highlighting, because sometimes we tend to think, okay, the Arahant has to experience complete cut off of the whole experience. He has to be like a unconscious person when he is experiencing this Arahanthood. Rather, Buddha points out here, okay, he still is living. So here we are not talking about the Arahanta Pala Samadhi or Nirodha Pala Samapatti. Rather, here the point is about the typical day-to-day living of the Arahant, where he is completely free from the influxes, but still his six sense bases are operating. As a result of that, he has to go through a certain amount of suffering. He is not free of that. He is not empty of that. But he is empty of the burden coming of the defilements, burden coming from the influxes, the asavas, anusayas. Now he is completely empty of that. But still, because of the living, he has to go through, bear certain amount of aberration coming because of the six senses. So this is what highlighted here in the Chula Sunyata Sutta. Very important facts, actually, we as practitioners who need to understand. Okay, with that, I'd like to conclude today's Dhamma discussion, or this discussion based on the Concept and Reality book. Now I'd like to open the session for questions.
Asra Swaminathan.
Yeah.
Today we have 6 questions. First question is a general question. Dear Bhante, referring the answer to the verbal question last time, is there a necessity that we have to proportionally eradicate tanha to move forward in the path, or it is that eradication of avijja which goes in the front and eventually tanha getting extinguished? Much merits for your valuable service. With metta, that's the end of the question.
Yeah, actually, I like to say this is happening parallelly. Actually, the eradication of tanha, the path, the methodology that Buddha is preaching is very similar to the eradication of the avijja, that what we are doing. So more you understand the true nature, the correct nature of things, we'll use the term things, then the tanha is naturally abandoned. You don't need to particularly, or you don't need to separately you start another process to abandon tanha. Because we have the desire because we don't know the true nature. So in that sense, I like to agree with you telling, okay, so we need to develop the wisdom. So once we are developing the wisdom, naturally the tanha is abandoned. That is also true. I can accept. But I feel it is happening parallelly. So you can't say which one is happening first, either tanha or avijja, abandoning first. I feel it is happening in parallel. So as we are developing the vipassana, then naturally the tanha is also abandoned, avijja is also abandoned. They are also gradually reduced. So anyway, abandoning both are necessary, and I feel they are happening concurrently as we develop the practice.
Second question is a mindful sitting question. Dear Bhante, could you please advise, is it possible to carry out Vedananupassana on the multiple waves of subtle sensations that arises as the breath gets subtle in Anapana practice? I am trying, but without any success. Thero Saranai. That is the end of the question.
Maybe possible, but the point is, for that to happen, you need certain amount of concentration and balancing of the faculties, enough mindfulness. These are very much like prerequisites for the practice. So immediately trying to confront the sensations or any kind of feelings might be difficult. Particularly handling painful feelings might be difficult because it needs certain amount of distance. Say, for example, if there is a pain happening at your knee, so once you are trying to figure it out, you are trying to focus onto it, it can appear certainly maybe intense and maybe unbearable. So that you are not being successful. You are unable to handle it. You can't be patient with it. You're being somewhat pressured as a result of that, tense as a result of that. But when you develop Kayanupassana, say rising and falling of the abdomen or Anapanasati, elements meditation, so any of these Kayanupassana based techniques help us to develop fair amount of mindfulness and concentration. And the idea is you are able to keep the process at a distance and you are able to observe it. So you know how to do it properly while without any interruption to the process, but still step back and watching it. So this process this art become available to you, accessible to you. Now the same approach now you can apply to the Vedananupassana. So various feelings are there, so you are able to look at it objectively without considering it as me or myself. So they are merely feelings, and so they become mere feelings, and you are not being very much disturbed by them. Having painful feelings is not a disturb to you. Rather, it becomes a teacher to you, something like that. Similarly, pleasurable feelings are not grabbing you, rather they become mere pleasurable feelings. So likewise, so that mental balance which you need during the Vedananupassana might not be easy to understand or easy to generate by immediately putting attention to the Vedananupassana, to various feelings. Rather, if you have some hands-on experience while in the Kayanupassana, then it may be easy for you to switch on to the Vedananupassana.
Okay, the third question out of 6, it is a Dhammasaman question. Dear Bhante, I was reviewing the last session's book reading and would like to get more explanation from on the following part. As a preliminary step towards this end, those two concepts are replaced by the two terms upadana, arising, and vaya, decay. These latter enable us to view the two extremes rightly, sammaditthi, as they are suggestive of conditionality. In developing samatha and vipassana, calm and insight, the mind is made to oscillate between these two terms with ever-increasing momentum, spurred on by the three marks: anicca,
Anicca.
anicca, dukkha, suffering,
Yeah.
dukkha, suffering, and anatta, not self. At the peak of intensity in this oscillation, the lingering notions of existence and non-existence wane into insignificance, since the mind now hardly rests on them. The second sentence above states that during our practice, the mind is made to oscillate between existence and non-existence, or udaya vaya, with ever-increasing momentum. Appreciate if Bhante can explain this a bit further. Much merits for your valuable service. Metta, that's the end of the question.
Yeah. So you are referring the Kachanagatta Sutta, where Buddha points out that the typical nature of the mind is to associate one kind of an extreme. So our way of thinking, how we take decisions, or how we look at the society, how we look at the matters, usually takes a side. This or that, yes or no, 1 or 0, black or white, far or near, yes or no, existence or non-existence. So likewise, so it's very much like a dualistic approach that we take, and thinking that either things are available or things are not available. Things are existing, things are not existing. So these are the two extremes typically taken. Dvanisito koyan kachana loko ebuye. Atitancha natitancha. And then the point highlighted in the practice is that suppose that you are, say, we'll take the Vedananupassana example again, it's easy to explain. Say you are experiencing various feelings. So at the beginning for you, there is a painful feeling, there is a pleasurable feeling. So maybe we are on one extreme. There are feelings, there is a feeling. So we have the perception that there is a feeling. But say as we further and further refine our attention, so you might understand, okay, these feelings are coming and going. They are quite transient. They are impermanent. So they are quickly arising and passing away. Udaya vaya. Quickly arising, passing away. Quickly arising and passing away. Now, when one see that they are passing away, quickly passing away, passing away, passing away, now you can't say that the pleasurable feeling exists. You can't say the painful feeling exists, because you see that how quickly they pass away. How can we say it is existing when we see it is, say, disintegrating, when it is being destroyed, when it is passing away very quickly, very rapidly? So then we are unable to stand on that side. We are unable to stand on that extreme, telling that they exist. So the feelings exist is something now we can't stand on. But on the other hand, we can't say that the feelings are not there totally, because you can see quickly they are arising also. Pleasurable feeling is arising, painful feelings arising, equanimous feeling arising. So different feelings are arising. So you see the arising side. Now, when you see the arising side, now you can't stand on the other extreme, telling that no feelings are available, because you see that they are arising. So likewise, the arising and passing away. So these impermanence, once one properly understand, so the point is our mind is no more able to stand on any extreme. Rather, only conclusion that one can say is that they are quickly arising and passing away. The whole world is like a flux. Nothing remains constant. Everything is in a transience. So you can't take any side. Everything is 50-50, something like that. So therefore, the extremes are now abandoned. So rather than taking an extreme, now Buddha is giving a beautiful principle of the Patissamuppada. Imasming sati idang hoti imasuppada idang uppajjati. Imasming asati idang nahoti imasa nirodha idang nirujjati. When this exists, this also comes to be. With the arising of this also arises. When this does not exist, this also can't exist. With the passing away of this also passes away. So everything is dependently arisen. So when things are there, the necessary conditions are there, things can come to be. But when the necessary conditions, causes are not there, things can't come to be. So the whole mechanism is now very much like revealed, how things are happening, how things are destroyed. So that's why Buddha exclaimed, telling, okay, samudayoti bhikkave, pubbe anusustesu dhammesu, jnanang udapadi, chakkung udapadi, aloka udapadi. So he is quite happy understanding this principle, how things are arising. Similarly, he say, nirodoti ko bhikkave, chakkung udapadi, jnanang udapadi, aloka udapadi, vijja udapadi. So he is quite happy to understand, okay, things are passing away. So basically the whole Patissamuppada, the Idappaccheta help us to understand the whole mechanism. How this whole world, either animate or inanimate, things are happening without any person, without any self. And this is the crux of the teaching that Buddha is trying to point out in the Kaccānagatta Sutta.
Fourth question out of 7. It is a mindful sitting question. Dear Venerable Bhante, I do mindful practice regularly and have a great awareness about my mind's behavior. Therefore, I mostly manage any sort of bad situation without making worse. My question is, am I in a correct path? Will I be able to achieve wisdom if I follow this path, vipassana? That is the end of the question.
Yeah, can you repeat the first part, please?
Yeah. I do mindful practice regularly and have a great awareness about my mind's behavior. Therefore, I mostly manage any sort of bad situation without making worse.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, am I in a correct path? Then will I be able to achieve wisdom if I follow this path, vipassana? That is the end of the question.
Okay. So I think you can trust this awareness. So basically, the trusting the awareness, trusting the mindfulness practice, and the wisdom that is generated because of this practice is something that we need to have. It appears like quite a simple practice as we move forward. Because at the beginning, we are in a kind of a struggle because mind is being distracted. A lot of hindrances are there, very difficult. So we have to struggle a lot. But later, merely looking at the mind and understanding how mind get tensed, how mind tempt to grasp, and what are the hindrances appearing, what are the defilements appearing. So it's appear like a simple practice. But you can't reach this practice without that preliminary skills. So once fair amount of practice is there, certain skills are already developed. Now the practice becomes smooth. So we can trust this awareness. We can trust this simple mindfulness practice. And actually in the depth, we have the 3 pillars, Sila, Samadhi, Panya. So the practice of the morality is there. So you are further associating the Sila. And again, the maintenance of the clarity of the mind is there. That is the Samahita, the Samadhi part. And the development further about the wisdom is there. Sila, Samadhi, Panya are the ground. Noble Eightfold Path is the ground. So even though the whole process appears like simple, so we can elaborate based on the Noble Eightfold Path. So you need to have Sammaditthi, you need to have Samma Sankappa. Based on that, you are developing further, maintaining further about the Sila, and further developing the what we call the mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. Yeah.
The fifth question out of 7, this is a general question. Dear sir, what is the meaning of Naya Vipassana?
Yeah, the idea is inferential knowledge. Say you practice Vipassana based on a certain sample, as we even discussed today. So once we are practicing, so we are not taking the whole spectrum of the experience, but we take only very limited, simple portion of the whole experience. But the understanding we develop is not limited to that limited sample. It can be broadened to the full spectrum. Say, for example, you are practicing elements meditation based on your direct contact with the internal elements available, manifesting within the body. But that understanding you gain through elements meditation using the direct internal elements manifestation, that understanding is not limited to the internal elements, rather that understanding is applicable, generalized to the vast spectrum of whole physicality. So therefore, the Naya Vipassana indicates that broadening part, widening part. You are applying the understanding, that wisdom, that insight into the broader spectrum. So that is the Naya Vipassana. That you are inferentially, you can now enhance your understanding, broaden your understanding, and you don't need to take each and every sample from the whole universe to understand their nature. But you use your internal bodily experience to understand the manifestation of the elements, but that insight generated is applicable to everywhere.
Okay, the sixth question out of 7, it is a Dhamma sermon question. Dear Bhante, based on today's Dhamma talk, is it necessary to be aware of gradual descent to awareness, whatever the state you are in, and contemplate on them, or not deliberately focus on these Dhamma topics, but keep on practicing? Metta, that is the end of the question.
Also, a very good question. Is it really necessary to understand all these deep theories, or the importance is to the practice? So I like to accept your idea that we simply have to practice. You don't need to really take all the very comprehensive theories and principles and deep teachings. And it's difficult to understand also sometimes. And sometimes it can be a burden to the mind. But the beauty is that as we continue the practice, you might sometimes have certain inclination, okay, what is really going on? I like to look at deeply. I want to see further a sutta, explore this area. So this kind of an approach is also therefore not a bad thing. Because as we continue our practice, the ability to understand some deep Dhamma indicates certain development, indicates the wisdom arising in the mind, improving or increasing in the mind. So therefore don't look down, that thinking that we don't need certain guidelines from the Buddha or certain this kind of teachings taking from the Buddha, some deep aspects of sunyata or say animitta or this kind of things. These are pretty interesting. And once we know them properly, clearly, then all the doubts are abandoned. You become more and more confident about the practice, and you start appreciating the Buddha's teaching further and further. You start being grateful to the Buddha further and further, because you understand the depth of it. And certain suttas are directly touching the depth, directly taking to the level that your experience and Buddha's teaching become very much like in parallel. So that you become more and more confident about your practice. When we are discussing certain this kind of suttas, this kind of books, because it gives us a lot of confidence, it gives us a lot of trust to the practice and a lot of trust to the Buddha and the Dhamma.
The last question is a general question. Dear Bhante, how can one cease sense desire from the six senses at contact level in the present moment, as per the cessation of contact in the Majji Sutta. Seems like cessation of contact occurs at death. And also, does Passa Nirodha mean place? Thank you, Bante. That is the end of the question.
Yeah, interesting question. Actually, we think sometimes Passa Nirodha is where the sense contact has to be stopped. But I like to say that Passa Nirodha Gamini Patipada is nothing but the Noble Eightfold Path. It is not that we are trying to stop the six sense bases being stopped or inactive. Rather, Passa Nirodha Gamini Patipada is the development of the Noble Eightfold Path. So when one is developing the Noble Eightfold Path, even though the senses are operating, even though they are in correspondence with their external objects, eye with the sights, ear with the sounds, nose with the odors, tongue with the taste, body with the tangibles, and the mind with the mind objects, even though that operation is still going on, so the mind remains calm. Mind remains unattached. Mind remains without any involvement. So that is the beauty. It is not that we are trying to close the six sense doors totally or in a particular time, that we are trying to close them all together. While they are open, while the sense contact still happening, how the mind remains calm. So as explained in the Sona Sutta, and how mind remains without mixing with that experience. So that Venerable Sona, the Arahant, is explaining. What's that? There's a very beautiful statement in the Sona Sutta. You can read that. It's in the Anguttara Nikaya Chakkanipata, 6th part. Venerable Sona is explaining, telling, Samma Vimuttasya Bhikkhuno Busachepi Chakku Viññaya Rupa Chakku Sāpatang Agacchati. Amissi Katame Vasa Chittang Hoti. Titang Vipamuttang Vayanchassanu Passati. So he simply explains that when the eyes are open, so this Arahant, so he can encounter various sights. But the beauty is, mind does not get involved with those sense contact, with those incoming or happening sights. Rather, simply mind its own business. So simply mind remains calm, quiet, clear, even though the sights are happening. Ditthe dittamattang bhavissati. Or else we can go to the further depth in the Kalakarama Sutta. Datta dattabban dittanna manyati. Adittanna manyati. Dattabbanna manyati. Dattarangna manyati. So for the Arahants, it is a mere seeing. For the Arahant, he doesn't have any conceiving, thinking nothing, I couldn't see it. Or again, he is not having any conceiving, thinking that it should be seen. Or else he doesn't have any kind of a conceiving telling that I am seeing. There is a self who is seeing it, or there is an seer or an experiencer. So he doesn't have any such kind of a conceiving. So the complete eradication of the conceiving is there. Manjana is no more. So those are very interesting parts of the Dhamma. So it is not that we are trying to shut down the whole system, whole six senses. Rather, while the six senses are operating, how the mind still maintains its clarity. How the mind is still maintaining its, seclusion. So that is the beauty of the Dhamma.
Okay, that was the last question, Bante.
Yep.
So we come to the end of today's session. First, I would like to thank Bante for his valuable time. We would also like to pass our merits to everyone, both seen and unseen, who is enabling this program, and to all the participants for joining it. With that, I would like to conclude the program today. Theruvan Saranai.
Yeah, Theruvan Saranai.